Wow, my hair is getting quite long, wouldn't you say? Hello there, people of the internet. Welcome back to another exciting episode of me driving the Cougar. We got some big problems on the Cougar that I'm fixing, so I figured I'd go ahead and start making myself this episode of driving the Cougar. Let me show you guys what we're dealing with. I've already fixed it, but I don't know how good of a fix it's gonna be. So we're gonna learn together. I've never done this before. Let's see what we let's see what we got, I guess. All right, so this is the Cougar, and anyone who's been following it knows that there's this huge cluster of wires right here. My explanation for that is that whenever I turn on the headlights, this toggle switch here gets really, really hot. You can see how it's just kind of melting those little plastic grommets that attach to the toggle switch. This gets toasty, so I just kind of hang that down right there so it doesn't start any fires or anything. Well, I've had some people tell me to put in a relay. Issue is putting in a relay with this already jerry-rigged system was a little bit of a challenge, so I did have to do some research on... long story short, I did some research, did some wire tracing, figured some stuff out, and we now have ourselves a relay on our wire system here. So that is still quite a little on the sketchy side. I definitely will not lie about that one. But the relay is, in fact, installed, and it has a fuse on it. So if I blow a fuse, then my headlights go out, and I end up crashing into the side of the road. So we are connected. This right here is connected to power. Issue is I'm curious to see if this power wire right here will get hot with this toggle switch. I think that it will. I think that we're getting too much power going to the toggle switch, so I might have to do something about that, because this right here is just a straight wire to a power wire. So that we'll see how that goes. I think that our toggle switch is still going to get hot, but this relay should stop the internals from getting hot, because if we look in here, I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this in here, but if we look in here at the guts, that is all jerry-rigged and connected together. Trust me, this is done way before the Cougar was, something that I owned. But this right here is all jerry-rigged together, and you can see how all these got super, super hot as well. We got darkening on all sorts of stuff in there, and that's not supposed to look like that. So at the very least, even if the toggle switch still gets hot, this rig right here with this relay should stop the internals in here from getting hot. I might have to get a resistor for these wires right here and run that to our toggle switch, and that will be what we see. But we turn the toggle switch on, which I'm not going to do right now, and the headlights do turn on. Issue is I was just basically curious to see how well this would work. I ran a wire through our firewall. There are no good grounds in the dash of the Cougar, just with how everything's set up. No good grounds anywhere. So I ran a ground direct to the battery. I will get a better setup than this. That right there is just basically me testing to see if this setup is going to work. And now that I've said my piece on that, let's turn this on. Perfect. And we have ourselves headlightage. So the setup does work. So we got headlightage. I would keep it on to see if it gets hot, but we are actually in the process of fixing something else with the Cougar. Last episode I made of driving the Cougar, I talked about a misfire. Well, the misfire has gotten really, really bad, and the Cougar's not accelerating at all. Well, sometimes it accelerates really, really well, and sometimes it does not accelerate well at all. So I'm thinking it's the throttle position sensor. I went ahead and I fiddled around with those messed up wires for the throttle position sensor, and that didn't seem to do anything, so I think it's the sensor itself. I replaced the sensor a long time ago. It was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago at this point whenever I replaced that sensor. So it might just be going bad. I'm going to replace the TPS, see if that fixes it. If that does not fix it, I know we have fuel pressure because we got plenty of acceleration. So it's not going to be a fuel pressure fuel pump problem. I might try swapping out the cap, rotor, and wires for the Cougar. Maybe we have some sort of electrical disturbance going on there, but I don't think so. That does not seem to be the case. We don't have a timing issue because the Cougar runs fantastic sometimes, and other times it just runs like absolute garbage. I notice whenever I press the gas pedal down and I hold it in one standard position, the Cougar will accelerate a bunch and then stop, and then accelerate a bunch and then stop, and then accelerate a bunch and stop. So that is what leads me to think it's that throttle position sensor. I'm fairly certain about that. Got one coming, should come in tomorrow. We'll plug it in. We'll see how that works. If that doesn't work, I'm going to get into that little panel right there and replace the little computer that controls the EFI system and fuel and all that crap that goes on with the Cougar. I'm going to try a couple of different things. If that doesn't work, I'm going to swap out the O2 sensors. Maybe we got something going wrong with them. The Cougar's got about 300,000 miles on it, and I think those are original O2 sensors. So that's probably time to swap those out anyway. So TPS, and then that thing, if the TPS doesn't work, O2 sensors, if that doesn't work, and if none of that works, I might just throw a carburetor on the Cougar and decide to myself, well, the EFI system is simply not working. The Cougar's not getting the fuel that it needs. So we'll make this thing work. It might not be factory standard, but we will make this thing work. Okay. I was not expecting to be put in the situation that I'm currently in. Good news, bad news. Bad news is I'm currently stranded at a gas station. Good news, that relay I hooked up with this light switch, I had the lights on. I don't think I do anymore. I should probably double check that so my battery don't die. Alright, so light switch was on. I think it was on long enough to where if the heat problem was still a problem, I would definitely feel it. And we got no warmth anywhere in there. Gotta have some big stones, just gonna shove your hand into some wires like that, right? Okay, so the heat problem with the wires is gone, and I swapped out the throttle position sensor, and now the Cougar's actually running really, really well. Unfortunately, I'm currently stranded because of this right here. You see that? That is a high temperature. That's higher than what the Cougar is supposed to be. I noticed the temperature going up, and I was like, nah, that's not right. So I came to the conclusion that maybe we had ended up blowing out that JB Weld freeze plug, and maybe I just didn't have any coolant in the system. So, of course, I pull off at the gas station before I get too hot, and I check out the cooling system, and sure enough, it's pressurized, and we got, fluids still inside that cooling system. The issue I'm having is that's not the problem, but the Cougar is currently overheating by quite a bit. I felt the radiator and the hoses, and those are not warm at all. I think we have ourselves, I don't think that it is the water pump itself. I think we have ourselves a stuck thermostat. That would make the most sense, because the inside of the coolant system is quite grody. So now I'm stuck with a conundrum. Do I wait for the Cougar to cool and then just kind of beeline it right to the house? Or do I'm not entirely positive on what I'm going to do here. Do I get it towed back to the house? I'm probably just going to wait for it to cool and then try to get it back to the house. I'll just sit here for like the next half an hour or so. We'll see how well that works. And fingers crossed. I could pull the thermostat housing and just ride it without a thermostat. That would get me home. Issue is it's currently pressurized, and I would have to take apart quite a bit to get to that thermostat housing and pull that thermostat, and I'm not willing to do that at a gas station. So I'm probably just going to sit and wait. The house is like a mile up the road. I just took the Cougar for a quick test drive to test out the throttle position sensor. That seems to have been our problem, because now the engine is running significantly better. No rest for the wicked. So I'm just going to sit here for the next half an hour or so, and we will see what comes of it. All right, as both the sun and temperature go down, and I sit here waiting in the middle of a gas station parking lot, I discovered that there are worse places to break down than a gas station, because I'm hungry, so I went out and got myself a very nutritious dinner of some glazed donuts and some yogurt pretzels. Fantastic. Dinner of the gods right here. But yeah, I figure since I'm sitting here waiting anyway, I may as well prop up my phone. I'm literally watching Brandon Herrera's Gun Mean review while I wait for the Cougar to cool off. And she's getting there, slowly but surely. I'm probably going to sit here for an hour or so before I try limping her back home. I think I'll limp her back home. Hopefully we don't overheat on the way. Worst case scenario, I do a couple of stops and wait for it to cool down on the way back. It's going to take me quite a bit of time to make it home if I do that, but fingers crossed. I went ahead and I hit the thermostat housing with a wrench to see if maybe that would like open it up and knock it loose. We're going to find out as I drive back home. Hopefully it opens up. Yeah, okay. So I guess I'm just going to sit here and wait. Whenever I get back to the house, we'll see what happens. I got to get myself a new thermostat. I'm pretty sure it's the thermostat, not the water pump, because the water pump was working fine for a good amount of time, and now it's just suddenly nothing is working. Not only that, but we got ourselves a pressurized system, and it was not warm at all and not opening up. Yeah, wish me luck on that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have successfully made it back. Temperature reading is about 230. I think that's what that is. 200. That might be 220. So we didn't overheat all that badly, but that's still not good. So that's not a blown head gasket. I don't have any oil in the water or anything. Like, I can literally feel that the pressurization in the coolant system is not depressurizing, and that's something that happens whenever the thermostat opens up. So that tells me thermostat is stuck. On the drive back here, I was like driving. I basically floored it going forward, and then I would put the car in neutral and then shut it off. Not good for the transmission, but it got me home. I was only like a mile away. So I got to figure that out. I'll go ahead and I'll pull that thermostat housing off down the road and replace that thermostat. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that fixes the problem. I'm really hoping that it's not something bigger. So I'll let you guys know whenever I got that thermostat. We'll make another film segment for this episode. All right, a wee bit of a follow-up with the Cougar. This obviously is not the Cougar. This is a Jeep. I'm inside because it is currently dark outside, and I did not feel like filming in the darkness. So I'm just going to use this Jeep for representation. The thermostat inside of the thermostat housing was not opening, and so as a result, the engine was overheating. Well, I decided to kind of coax the thermostat. Wow, somebody's got some loudspeakers out there. I decided to kind of coax the thermostat into opening so we could get some water flow. It took a little while, but I did get the thermostat open. And whenever it opened, I had noticed that the water level of the radiator dropped significantly. I think that behind the thermostat, there was no water. And so as a result, since there's no water behind the thermostat, there's no significant way for the thermostat to heat up properly and then open. And that's why it wasn't opening. So eventually it did open just from heating up from the water that was on this side of it, from the radiator. And we were able to get proper cycle pass through. So without water inside of the engine, that certainly explains why it was overheating. And why it was overheating, well, the water feeding from the radiator into the engine, that right there tells me, that right there was not warm, which is one of the reasons why the thermostat did not open. Eventually, over time, that water warmed up to the point to where the thermostat did open. So the reason why I think that there was air inside of the engine and no water is, well, I drive the Cougar on basically a daily basis, but I only drive it about a mile one way and then a mile back home. So that's not long enough to properly pressurize and heat up the system long enough for the thermostat to actually open. On the heater hoses, I have a little bit of a leak due to a slight rust issue. Me driving that 1 mile pressurizes the system enough for water to leak out from that little rust issue that I have on that heater hose, but not enough to open up the thermostat to allow radiator water to enter the system. So I think me doing that over and over and over and over led to a situation where there was just simply not that much water inside of the engine. And there was water inside of the radiator, because once it opened and cycled through, I had to pour probably about half a gallon of water into the radiator. I think that's a situation that we came across. I successfully opened it up. There's a couple of things that I can do to kind of get around this problem. Thing number one, since I don't drive the Cougar very far, I can take the thermostat housing off and I can just have no thermostat there. The Cougar is not going to heat up to proper temperatures, but we're also not going to have issues where there's water on one side of the thermostat and not the other. If I drive long distances, I'll have to put the thermostat back in so I get proper fuel mileage. Now that is one solution. Another solution is just like once every week, maybe 2 weeks or so, take the Cougar out, drive it around enough for the thermostat to properly open. So I don't know which of those I'm going to do. Probably the second one, because getting that thermostat housing off of that engine requires taking brackets off. I got to take the alternator off. I got to do quite a bit of process to that. So I'm probably not going to mess around with that. Speaking of messing around, do you guys like this thing? This right here actually belongs to my girlfriend's father. It's a Jeep C9, I think, inline six, carbureted, obviously. The starter on this thing's going bad. I know that because sometimes it doesn't start. You turn the key, it goes click, 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 sounds like a dead battery. And then I grab a wrench or a stick or something, and I smack on that starter a little bit, and then she fires right up. So this is a manual, not a whole lot that I can say about this thing. I've taken this thing out to the gun range area before. It was a nightmare of a time, actually. But yeah, maybe I'll do some content on this if you guys want to see some more stuff with this right here. But the Cougar, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do about the situation that I'm in with it. I'm probably, like I said, just going to drive around enough once, maybe every week or so, and long enough to open up that thermostat. So I'm going to try that for a little while and see if that resolves our problem, because me trying to fix that little rust hole area is giving me problems, and we are still having issues with very tiny amounts of leakage. So nothing I can do about that, at least for now. We'll see what happens in the future. Alright, I wasn't sure how I wanted to end this. I just got back from the range. I figured this would be a good place to end it. This is like 5 minutes up the road from the gun range. Haven't been here in years. This is a restaurant slash airboat place that also serves alligator tail. So I'm going to go have some alligator tail because I haven't had it in literally years. So that's kind of where I drove the Cougar. If this is the end of the episode, thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. See you all in the next episode.